Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Mom Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. And now, let's start the show. Welcome to 2023. It's Andrew Hada. I got some new light on my face, and we're gonna send a bite into 2023 with our new franchise that we're covering. I don't know if you guys have been watching this review. Actually, I do know. I do know the answer, and so you're all surprised as to what movie we're covering this week, based on how many people have watched the original review. But anyway, we're talking about Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. We're doing all of the Hellraisers that are under the top four. And so Hellraiser 2, Hellbound, is directed by Tony Randall, not that one. It's written by Peter Atkins, and it's based on Clive Barker's story. He kind of gave him some tips, and he gave him backstories and everything, which we will talk about. Um, but yeah, so this movie was from 1987, and it was released. It was filmed in 19. Oh no, it was filmed in 1988. It came out like immediately. I think they greenlit it while the first one was still being made, and it's kind of like he was also supposed to get a lot more budget, and then they ended up taking it away. And so it's a very interesting project. But yeah, we're covering Hellraiser 2. Um, who did it last time? William. I don't think you did last time. Will you give us a plot synopsis for Hellbound, Hellraiser Part 2?
Yes. I will also preface it by saying that I sometimes had no idea what was going on in the movie, so I'll do my best. But it pretty much starts.
You and the writer were on the same
Yeah, we
page.
were both trying to find it the whole time. Um, but it starts off immediately where Hellraiser 1 stops. So we're immediately with the daughter, and she's like in a mental institution now, and there's this crazy doctor who's really into the Cenobites, and he's working with a resurrected Julia from the first movie, Frank's lover in the first movie, and they are just trying to get the Cenobites back, I guess. And then the daughter is trying to stop them, and then there's a little girl who's good at puzzles in the mix, and that's pretty much it. The Cenobites come back at one point. We kind of learn some more backstory about the Cenobites, which was cool. Um, but then the box is just still out in the open for anyone to find.
And sometimes it turns into a
Yes,
tempest.
yes,
We learned.
the Leviathan, which was cool.
Okay, so yes, the Leviathan. Yeah, the graphic or the production design is still on point. So, guys, what did you think of Hellbound, Hellraiser Part 2?
Okay, obviously it's not as good as the
Yeah,
first one, but I do get the sense of like I know William, you weren't here for when we watched all the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, where you're like, "Oh, I'm probably going to appreciate this more when I see some really
yeah,
bad
yeah.
ones." This still has like kind of cool stuff in it, and like kind of it's doing something interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, well, and I think it's that thing where, well, first of all, okay, so this movie starts and it gives us the backstory to Pinhead, and I'm very happy about that for two reasons. The first reason is that we get more backstory, but the second reason is because every time we talk about the Hellraiser franchise, Josh brings up that Pinhead used to be a World War II captain,
Oh yeah, that's true.
even though like he doesn't really remember where he learned that information from or why he got it, and so we're done with that. We'll never have to hear it
Wait, does
again.
it come back though after this?
You know it, maybe, I don't
Are
remember.
you guys saying there's one movie where it's like
But
all
yeah, I
about World War
think
II?
I no
Oh,
there's one movie where it's about like the ancestors of Pinhead or
oh,
something.
wow.
What I
But
did,
it
you know
doesn't.
what was a
It takes
bigger
place in the
Oh
past,
reveal?
but
yeah.
in the French.
Like,
Oh, no! Don't spoil that yet.
don't spoil the reveals, okay?
Do
Because they're
spoil
very
that.
dumb.
No. That review was great. I do okay. So it's that thing where I remember every time I watch Hellraiser, I remember why it's a classic film. And every time I watch Hellraiser 2, I remember that it has really good ideas, but it's a bit all
I
over the
know, I
place.
know,
Like it's almost like it came out a year afterwards, and I feel like they only had
I
a year
know.
to put it
Something
together.
too that I was kind of noticing, and like just like having like read a little bit of Clive Barker now too. It's like I feel like his vision or like his ideas are just like so crazy and big, and he came out in like the '80s with these films, and like it's kind of like what Stanley Kubrick was talking about, like AI. He's like, I can't do this yet because it won't look as cool. And it's like they really go for practical effects, and I think that this movie really stretched their limits sometimes in a way that the first one kind of was able
Hmm.
not to. But this one, yeah, it was so big, and it was hard for me to take it seriously. But I feel like I could have taken it seriously if I was like reading it. But like some of the visuals were just like so they didn't
Right.
quite do it right, so it just kind
Yeah,
of felt like
although
filler.
they do nail it a
Sometimes
bit.
they do,
Like
yeah.
when there's the giant like shots of hell and it's like just a big painting of like a
Oh
maze. You're
yeah,
Even
like,
that,
okay,
they
this
that
like
was
yeah.
looks
cool. That part
great.
was
Like,
awesome.
and then when you kind of get the close up like monster stuff, you're like, well, I don't
Yeah.
know. You know?
Well, and it's also like you know how in the last Scream or after they come out with a sequel like way later, where they'll introduce like a whole new story. Like in the last Scream, it's like a whole new storyline, whole new pair of protagonists and victims, and then they reintroduce Sydney from the original Scream, and she doesn't really fit in the story, but she's clearly just there to like give familiar or fans something familiar. This movie kind of feels like that, but it's a direct continuation of the original. Like the
Yeah.
girl, like one of the protagonists, like Josh was or like William was saying, is this girl, and she's in this. The whole movie takes place in this mental institution, and it's this girl who's mute. Her name, they've given her the name Tiffany, and so she's like really good at solving puzzles, which I think was cool. And so the doctor like wants to open Hellraiser World, but you're watching it and you're like, you don't even really need Kirsty or Julia for this movie. It's just there for
Yeah,
like
because
funsies.
Julia's not even really like she was in the first one. It's very
Yeah.
like, hey, remember this? Also, I do feel part of it was they kind of, even though this movie's like a little over 90 minutes, you could tell they wanted to pad the runtime a bit because a good 10 to 15 is just recaps of the first movie, including just seeing footage of the first movie. And you're like, okay, they're trying to like, kind of fill some time here at the beginning. Um, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And yeah, I definitely think that it does feel like I didn't, because I remember that there's that prologue about, there's like the recap at the beginning. I didn't remember that there's like three other recaps. And so there's just so much there. Like, why is so much of the movie recapped?
Yeah,
You know?
like not because they kind of like do the thing where they recap the first one in the first few minutes, and the like kind of Christie tells you what happens in the first few minutes, and then 20 minutes later they do a recap with flashbacks, like as a conversation. You're
Right,
like, we don't
right.
need three
You don't
different
need.
recaps of the first one,
If you told me we watched 15 minutes of the original film, I'd be like, yeah, we
Yeah,
did.
just direct screen footage from that movie.
And
Yeah.
here's the thing. Like, I like Tiffany. I think like a mute girl who's had trauma, who's just really good at solving puzzles. is a great protagonist, even for the Hellraiser franchise. But I don't think. But it's like, why are you here? You know, like why aren't we following Kirsty more? Because it's like that thing where it's like, why do we have this perfect protagonist? Like she's had trauma, she loves puzzles, she doesn't ever
Yeah.
talk. Like, why do we have this perfect protagonist? But also Kirsty's here to
Yeah,
just
she got
kind
here
of be
first
here.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kirsty's such an interesting character that it's like I want to know more about both of them, and I end up learning a lot about either of them.
It's also like, and I don't know if like Christie's like in the other sequels, but kind of like you mentioned, Scream, it does like bum me out when like a horror movie has a bunch of entries where it's like the protagonist's life just keeps getting worse and worse. You know, it's like, come on, like let them retire from facing demons. You
Like
know,
how
Way
sad
too
was Ellen
fatiguing.
Ripley really? Like every place she went was infested with aliens. You know?
Right. She needs to just stop.
She needed a
Stay
break.
home.
I don't
Yeah.
even think she knew she that we're not spoiling Alien 3. Although that's another good one, maybe.
Yeah, that could be good.
Yeah. I do like, okay, so we learn that the Doug Bradley, I do like, again, so they get her to open the box and then all the Cenobites come and they have a great scene where the Cenobites see the girl open the box and then they say, "Oh, this girl didn't even know what she was doing. Like
Yeah, that was
she's
good.
they said, "It is not hands that
Yeah.
call us,
yeah."
but
And then they just
desire."
walk past her, which is also
Yeah.
it's not only cool that they did that because it adds to their character, but it's also double cool because it still shows you the hypocrisy of the Cenobites because he says that, but they're all in the labyrinth. Like she's just going to another hell. You know?
Right. It's
Oh
just
yeah,
another
like
planet.
it's not like we're not gonna kill her. It's like we're gonna kill
Yeah,
multiple
we're
people for this
we're
Yeah, we'll
one.
like
save you.
Yeah.
it's kind of that thing where it's like you realize that the Cenobites have a very specific purpose to mix pleasure and pain. And so if you just happen to end up in the labyrinth, they're just gonna throw you to one of the many other demons whose whole purpose is just to kill human beings. You know?
Right. I mean, they have eternity to do it.
Yeah.
They recognize that, and so they take their time.
And it's
It doesn't
even
really matter.
it's cool, yeah, because then they run into Kirsty, and like I love their interaction with her because they're telling her like, "Oh, Kirsty, you keep showing up. Like you must want to be a
Yeah.
part of this." And she tells them like,
So eager.
yeah, they say so eager, and like I don't think like because Pinhead obviously has the voice, he has the look, but the female Cenobite, like what they do with her voice and the woman, it's Barbie Wild is the actress, she does such a good job like being faceless but like you can tell that she wants to be excited but she's like holding back because she's a Cenobite and her
Yeah.
performance is just really well done especially in the second
It
one.
was good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do like the scene where they're talking, the screen is like rotating slowly and I just love that they are doing that for really no reason, like it's such an easy like little effect but they wanted to do it, you know.
Yeah.
did you guys
It adds to
did
their
you guys notice
menace.
the
Yeah.
underlying titles this time?
What was it?
When it does the
No,
titles,
I
they're
I
still
completely
underlined.
forgot.
Oh no! I remember you mentioning that last time though, but no, I didn't even pick up
Eventually,
on that.
Look at the font
yeah.
expert
Apparently,
Yeah,
Andrew
no,
apparently,
on
I'm the
keep
only
deck.
an
one who cares
eye.
about fonts.
Yeah,
Also, okay,
but
so
someone has to.
and again, like there's this. Okay, so there's this doctor, and he knows what the box is, and he's the one who like gets Julia to come back, and the way he does it is he gets one of his patients who like his psychosis is he thinks there's bugs crawling all over him, and so he gives him a razor to let him cut himself on the bed where Julia was, and Julia comes back, but it's such a cool like it's all blood, and then you see just Julia's face come out, and she's like smiling. She has no
Yeah, like a
skin.
weird fog that's come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's such a cool effect. And it was like, I mean, because the whole thing is they just want Julia to come back. But the way they do it, and then they're like slipping on the blood now, like they're all fighting.
yeah. That's the part that I thought looked like really silly. Like when they were just like crawling
Yeah.
on the floor, it was like this isn't
Yeah,
scary at all.
it's
Like
like a
it's just
long shot.
absurd. Yeah,
It does go
Right.
it does
forever.
go on too long.
And they're just like flopping on the like they're not even. I don't feel like that worried for anybody. I'm just kind of like, all
But I
right,
mean,
let's
like
go.
that is how it would happen. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
weird
I feel
to
like
leave it all
it would have been
in.
more
Yeah.
effective, yeah, if they kind of
There's
slipped
some
a few
close-ups
times.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I would have like read that, I feel like I could have been like tuned like in that character's head, like I was crawling as fast as fuck.
See, and this was
Like
like
watching it was weird.
after this, like when Julia can like stand up, she's like still skinless, but she's like capable of walking around.
Yeah.
She gets this like white suit, and I'm like, oh, that's like such a cool iconic look. Like what a what a good look,
They
like
give her
her
the
in
dark
the
man.
white suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like covered in blood. But then they immediately like change it and just put her in bandages.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm like,
know.
oh
Like 2
well,
seconds later.
you had like a cool like this could be like she's the villain of this movie in the white
Right.
Yeah.
suit, but
And
then she's kind of not.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like they put her in that white suit, and then someone showed Clive Barker the budget, and he's like, "Yeah, let's wrap her up." Like,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we don't have the budget for this.
He's like, well, we had the one
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and like, okay, so they once she opens the box, they essentially turn the entire mental institution into the labyrinth pit, and so
Right.
it's a giant maze, and really the rest of the movie is just kind of Kirsty and Tiffany trying to figure their way out, and like
Like through
it's
hell.
it's
Yeah.
like it's cool because like at one point Kirsty goes into this place and she thinks she meets her father, and then of course it's dumbass Frank has come back to like talk to her,
Yeah.
and
This was also like I feel like this was like a bit of like where it gets muddled because it's like they go from like hell room to hell room. They're just kind of all over hell.
Yeah.
But like some of them is kind of like the Cenobite thing where it's like, oh, so hurts so good. And then sometimes it's kind of like the Faustian, like, oh, you don't get what you want.
Right.
Like Frank can't have sex. It's like that's kind of like a different version of this idea. But
Yeah.
they're just throwing everything at that point. They're like, yeah, hell, something weird's gonna happen, even if it's
Here's
not
a
really like
bunch of different
thematically
ideas,
correct.
yeah, these evil demons
Yeah.
really aren't playing by the rules.
Right. They're making it up as they go along.
That's
Well, they love the rules, though.
disrespect
Isn't
is
that
the
the
most
thing?
annoying thing that they do. It's this.
I did enjoy though, and this is another weird reference to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. There is an evil carnival like that's in hell for
Oh
some
yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
Which
Here.
part two of They also live in a haunted carnival
You
in Texas
can't
Chainsaw 2
have
for
a
some
sequel to a movie
reason.
without an evil carnival. Why even have it?
Right.
Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
up.
Well, okay, so like, and William kind of like he didn't say this out loud, but he kind of did when he was doing the synopsis. There's not a lot of plot in this movie. Like once
No.
there's so
Yeah.
much plot to get going because they have to like find the mattress, and then they think Kirsty's crazy, so they put her in a mental institution. They have to explain Tiffany. They have to explain she doesn't talk, and then they have to like get the house to like. There's another character that's like a love interest for Kirsty. That's a doctor, which
Oh,
is like,
yeah.
hey,
Detective or something.
yeah.
No, I thought he like
he works at the
works
hospital.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. He was just spying.
He
on
works
the
there, but he's
business.
like helping her.
Yeah.
But I don't even think he's in the hell part.
No,
is
because he
he?
gets
I don't
murdered
really
like 20
remember.
minutes in the movie. Like he's literally just there to like see exposition that Kirsty can't see.
Right.
I did like that guy at the very beginning when they're just doing recap after recap. There's like 5 minutes of him just walking through the Hellraiser 1 set and being like, weird,
Yeah.
fucking weird. This is weird. Like looking at like the sacrifice like chambers. So there's what an hour of that guy be like, what is this,
And
huh?
I do like
Tell
that
me the
it's
story
funny.
of all these things.
Yeah. It's funny because at the like there's like a bunch of cops and they're like Hellraisers, there's none of that here, and like they don't believe
You
her.
got a wild story, don't you?
Yeah. And they don't believe her at all, even though they're like looking at this mattress that has skin chains hanging off of it.
Yeah.
And then the boyfriend, like, she's like, oh, there's Cenobites and they want to take me back to hell. And he's like, you got it. I'm 100% on board. I have no more questions.
Yeah.
And he's like, I mean, to get some killed, so good for you.
You know.
It's funny to see it. Like I thought that was her boyfriend in the first one, but they're just kind of like, "Oh yeah, he's fine. He's not in this movie. Don't worry."
Yeah.
They say like one sentence, but he looks kind of like the boyfriend from the first one.
Yeah,
so.
enough to make you wonder. Like,
Yeah, like, well, you should have just made them the same, just killed them off.
yeah.
But yes, it is like so, and it even like the movie. Apparently, this film has like the most instance of like the two main characters saying each other's names because literally the last half is just Kirsty and Tiffany calling out for each other because they constantly get lost in the labyrinth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But okay, so they once the labyrinth comes out, the doctor is turned into his own Cenobite. And
Hmm.
here's where I feel the movie makes its misstep, and this is why I wanted to hold off. Because the doctor attacks the Cenobites as we know them, and he kills them. And as he kills them, they like revert back to their original thing. And I
Yeah.
really so the Chatterer, who's the guy with no mouth and he just has teeth, he turns into a child, which is an interesting idea. And it's kind of like because it makes you think like, was this an evil child or was this a child who just became a Cenobite because he got trapped in the labyrinth? Was he
With
like
like Tiffany
Tiffany?
or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But they show us that Pinhead was like a good guy and he was like a World War II vet. And it's like I feel like just seeing who they were, like the Butterball guy is just like a dude, and the girl is just like a girl from the 50s. Like that's all the information I want to know about Cinemite's backstory. But giving
Right.
Pinhead so much backstory, I feel like kind of takes away from him, especially with the first one, kind of introduces that they're immortal, and it's like, nah, they've only been this guy for like 10 years.
Right.
Right.
It is a weird, like, to me. Yeah, it's like, oh, so they all just kind of did this 50 years
Yeah.
Yeah,
ago,
it
and that
didn't
was
come
it.
back at all. Like we didn't find out
Yeah.
like why they showed us that in this particular story.
Like, one's not like from caveman times or something.
Right.
It's just like, no, they're just
Yeah, it didn't really
pretty
tie into
recent.
anything else. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like a big deal.
But,
Like it was just kind of like, well, here
yeah.
is more info, but it's like
But like
why?
they don't it
Wasn't
doesn't do
dramatic or
anything for
anything.
us. And it
Right.
doesn't do anything
Right.
for them in the story. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, he was a World War
They-
II
It
guy.
does feel like it was like that was a different draft, and that was all that's
Well,
left of that draft
Right.
or
apparently
something.
there's like 20 minutes of backstory that they had to cut out because of budgets. I don't know if it was filmed or not, but that would explain it. And it does kind of feel like, we've all written stuff when you write like a draft. Sometimes you keep something from the previous draft that no longer makes sense just because you're so familiar with it.
Yeah.
There's like I've had a script where on almost the second to last draft, a main character is still in there who doesn't exist anymore. And so I've had to go in and take him out. And just because in my head, he's always going to be there. But
Right.
like,
That scene connected at one time.
hmm
Yeah.
and it definitely
Yeah.
feels because like the doctor uses their knowledge, or like he uses the knowledge that Pinhead was a World War II agent to kill him, but he doesn't use that knowledge to kill Butterball or the Chatterer. It just kind of happens.
He just kind of uses spikes. It's also
Yeah.
weird to me the idea that like the Cenobites would be like, "Oh no, I've been impaled." It's like you've been impaled
So
by
many
Yeah,
thousands
things.
of
Yeah.
things. Why
you're
is
being
this the one that
impaled right
kills?
Right.
now on your face.
Yeah. Yeah. That's your deal. That's your
Yeah,
whole
it's
thing.
just like, oh, this does it.
Yeah, I also like that he has like because everyone can have like guess their own weapons, and Pinhead has picked chains with hooks on the end, and this guy has picked
Yeah.
like it looks like a Chinese finger trap with spikes coming out of both sides.
Yeah. His little tentacles.
Yeah, it doesn't look. Yeah, and then he has like tentacles out of his hand, like Omega Red from the X-Men.
Yeah.
It did actually kind of remind me of like kind of like comic book bullshit where
Yeah.
they'll be like, "Oh, we want to introduce a new villain to show he's tough. He's gonna like defeat Doctor
Yeah.
Octopus," and it's
Yeah.
like that was like the Doctor's so tough he killed the original
Right.
Cenobites. It's like I'm not that
And
wowed by
Yeah.
I think it would
this.
have
They're
worked.
actually pretty chill at the end
Yeah.
of the day. They're not really mad or anything.
Right.
They're cool.
And I think it would have worked better if either it was Julia who did it, or if the doctor had more of a presence. Because up until that point, like he's just kind of watching along. He kind of sets some stuff in motion, and he does kill the love interest. But like, you don't. I don't. I mean, I didn't see him as the main threat. Did you guys?
See, who's the main threat?
The
The doctor?
doctor.
The Doctor,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't until that moment.
Hmm.
Like when that
yeah,
happened, I was like,
it's
okay.
very well because they kind of do the hubris thing where he goes to hell and then like stuff starts happening. He's like, "Oh no, I didn't want this," and then you're like, "Okay, that's his like just like his
Yeah.
comeuppance." And then 30 minutes later, he's like, "Actually, I
I
like it
did like it.
now."
Yeah.
I've
And
been here for about 20 minutes now, and it's actually pretty.
And then the rest of the movie's about
yeah.
him,
And it kind of feels like in the
Halfway down.
original, if Pinhead and the Cenobites didn't show up and it was just this movie about Kirsty and like Frank coming back to hell and to deal with his stepmom, I would have watched that movie. That's still like
Yeah,
there's a lot there.
totally.
It's cool.
Yeah.
In this one, once Pinhead leaves or once they don't have Pinhead, I'm not like, oh, I hope something happens with the Doctor. Like, it's just not that interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
That's funny too. In the first one, when Frank wears his brother's skin, I did not expect skin trickery
Oh,
to
I
be such a
know.
prominent thing
Yeah,
in this
yeah.
movie, like 4 different
This is
The
times.
mask that we wear, gosh, the mask
they're
we
yeah,
wear.
the
The,
mask we
the,
wear.
the loose
They're
skin
they're
is a
doing
very big
that.
plot point
I
in this
also like
movie.
how, and not only do they do the loose skin multiple times, they're like Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I
But
was just gonna say, yeah.
every time they do the loose skin, it also comes with the reveal by her accidentally pulling off too much skin.
Fucking A.
Because it's both like the skin is
Yeah,
both tight as humanly possible, so you can't tell, but it also falls apart like paper. Like it
Yeah.
just,
Very,
it's
very
yeah.
fine line.
yeah. And so like, yeah, I mean, I don't even think we'll ruin the ending. Just because I will ruin a little part of the ending, but not what happens to the Doctor or Julia. Just go check it out. I do think it's still worth watching. I mean, it's
Yeah, practical effects and stuff. That there's enough there.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was pretty fun.
it's like
and I'll tell you what. Like I've seen that scene where they're talking to Kirsty about 100 times on YouTube. Like I watched that scene all. I just love the way he does dialogue with the Cenobites, and I think I showed it to Joe Sinclitico when we were doing Empty Space to give him some idea of like his character. Just like I just love the way he writes this kind of like because they're loving the torture, but they're also like so monotone. It's just a very unique performance, and so like there is a lot.
Yeah.
can I say though too? I thought the special effects for the most part, the practical effects were quite good, and like the matte paintings and stuff, really good. Um, After the plot is over, at the very end of the movie, they have a little like, "Oh, don't worry, Hellraiser is still going to happen" thing, where this like pillar comes out, and it is like
Oh, yeah.
you forgot to do your
I
art project
know.
until the
Yeah.
night
It's
before, and
so
it's due,
bad.
and you're like, "Let's just put stuff on this pillar,
That
man."
that pillar comes out like the number 4 comes out in the old Sesame Street cartoons, where it's just like,
It
Yeah.
is
It's like a freaking glue
it
stick or
is
something.
like black styrofoam with just shit
it
glued
literally,
to
yeah,
it.
it looks like
Like
someone just took the screen and just raised like the pillar
I know. God, that was
over the
so bad.
frame.
I forgot about that.
Because it doesn't even like
it
it's
was
coming out of
like
the
yeah.
mattress, but it doesn't even look like it touches the mattress one time.
I know.
And I
Yeah, it was like seventh grade me having to do like the mitochondria on like
Yeah.
particle board. I'm like, oh, I think I have some red like tape.
and I will
Just
say
put this shit on.
that was a late addition because originally it was going to be Julia who, and so at the very end there's a mattress that Julia was dead on and they're like looking at it and then a pillar rises and it starts spinning and you see Pinhead's head and he's back but he can't control it. And originally it was going to be Julia who's going to come back and she was going to be the antagonist for the rest of the series. The problem is that since these two were filmed so close together, by the time they got to the scene of that, Pinhead had blown up, and so he was clearly the most popular character, and so they just brought him back to bring him back to let fans know, like, oh, because originally he wasn't supposed to come back; that was going to be the end of him, and then they pulled in Michael Myers in their own in their own sequel to get rid of him, and so
Wow.
that's probably why it looks like garbage.
Yeah.
And the pillar itself looks good. It's just like the part where it comes out looks like
Yeah.
yeah. And I hope you guys like that pillar because it's coming.
Oh
It's
no,
coming
it's
back.
gonna be.
Mm.
Does the cool homeless man who transforms into a dragon ever come back?
Um,
I
Was
wanted
that
more
him
of
at the
that
very
guy.
end? That like, wait, the face that had the crickets on it
no, I think it's the
with,
one. It's the
with
guy
the
who
whole
like
thing.
at the end where you see the box and then you like the guy turns into the dragon and picks up the butt.
In the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
one, yeah,
Is
he
that the
like
same guy
picks,
who's on the
but I
first
don't think
one?
he's in this one.
Oh,
Oh
I thought he was.
yeah.
Who says the goodbye message in this one? It's like a guy's face that's like impaled on the
I
thing.
don't
Oh,
know
it's
who
like
that
the guy
is.
who's like, "What is your
Yeah.
pleasure, sir?" Like the guy who like sells people the
Oh,
puzzle
from the
box, but it's like
first
his face.
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, I think they do flashback to him
Okay.
in
Yeah, I do
this.
like that they brought
Yeah.
that character. They're like, oh, everyone's gonna know who this guy was.
Yeah.
And up until now, I just thought it was a random merchant who sold the box before, but it's definitely,
Yeah.
it's definitely that. But yeah, and I think that's the cool thing. about this franchise is that even, and I do think that it suffers a little bit from Clive Barker clearly couldn't shoot it because he was still working on the original when they were doing this one. And so the directors and stuff had to like build a sequel while not only was the director, not only was the original still being like made and distributed, but the
Yeah.
director was editing. So like you can't just stop him and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Because it's like, oh, he's editing the film.
Right.
And so I do think there's a lot in it that's good. I think it's worth watching, but yeah, it's a little bit rough around the edges.
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to sum it up.
Mm.
Pretty good. Not as good as the first one, but still pretty righteous in its own way.
Yeah, it's definitely
Yeah, if you like the aesthetic of the first one, this one will get. I
Yeah.
mean, it's 90 minutes. It's like
Yeah.
98
Right.
minutes or something. It's,
anything to hear.
and at least 20 of those minutes are from the
I
first
know.
movie, so you could just
Right.
skip that part
Yeah,
at the
they're
beginning.
giving you bathroom breaks. Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth watching. I think you guys should watch it. And next week we're gonna it's Hellraiser 3 Pillar Wars as we find out where this mysterious pillar has gone. And also, we meet the best
Wait.
character in the entire franchise. Next week, we're
Oh,
going to be
wow.
introduced to a little man we call JP. And you'll see why he's the best next week. It's only funny to me, but next week it'll be funny to everyone.
All right.
It's called Hell on
It's
Earth.
called Hell on Earth. And
There
now
it
we're.
is.
So, the weird thing for anyone who wants to watch these movies, part 1 and 2 are like on Tubi and Amazon Prime. And they're like because of rights and stuff, but all the other ones are going to be on HBO Max. So
That
if
is
you want
weird.
to, it's like
Yeah.
it's the thing where like a lot of times the first, because they were made at the same time, they have the same rights, but then after that they sold the franchise rights to someone else to make them. It's kind of why like when we were doing the Texas Chainsaw, sometimes like a random company we'd never heard of would copyright strike it because it's like, oh yeah, uh, Old World Films owns just Hellraiser 3 and no other Hell, or and so rights issues.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
weird.
but come join us next week. Also, we've hit, I don't know if we mentioned this last time, we mentioned it on Twitter, but we've hit 100 followers. So we will be doing a special 100 episode, 100 subscriber episode. So come join us whenever that happens. It'll be after Hellraiser, and we'll let you know when it is. But thank you for subscribing.
It's gonna be I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry. We're trying to lose
we want you guys
subscribers
to
to get back to 2
And
digits.
it's just going to be us sitting here being like,
Three's just way too much. Too much weight.
Jessica Biel's hot. I felt bad that they
Yes.
objectified her so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you for subscribing. If you haven't yet, go ahead and do that now. And we'll see you guys next week on the Busy Bomb Squad. As we have a little hell on earth next week.
That's not even a pun. It's just
I'm
you
getting
saying,
a little hungry. Maybe we should get a Cenobite after this.
You already did that at
Yeah.
the beginning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm hellbound to keep doing this pun.
No.
We should just like let it just run for 2 minutes.
Just 18 more minutes of just us
You guys
staring
have
at
like
you
turned
blankly
off
while
your
you're-
cameras. It's just me still making puns.
You're like sobbing at one point.
Put a pin in me.
Coolio. All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for watching the Bomb Squad. Please, while you're here, give us a like and a subscribe. We really appreciate it, and it means a lot.